of Polynesia in the hot seat. I'm your host, Leaso Piloy Lee, coming to you live from Katy, Texas. And joining me from Oklahoma is our one and only Chief Tasi. Tonight, we're beyond excited to welcome a truly inspiring guest to the hot seat. Born of Samoan and Filipino descent, or as he jokes, half Palusami and half Dinijuan. I had to try to get that right. Was raised
It was
between Los Angeles and Hawaii, surrounded by culture, creativity, and a deep love for the performing arts. He earned a full football scholarship to Duke University, where he played at a collegiate level and completed his bachelor's degree. After college, Eric built a successful career in medical sales and community activism in Southern California, and then, in a bold leap of faith, discovered his love for acting, landing his first leading role in an indie short film in 2018. Since then, Eric has appeared in hit shows like Hawaii Five-O, Station 19, 911 Lone Star, Obi-Wan Kenobi on Disney Plus. He starred in indie films like Philly, Dark Senses, and Carson, lent his voice to acclaimed podcasts like Rodriguez and Son and the Callisto Protocol, and worked behind the scenes on the ADR team for Taika Waititi's Next Goal Wins. From athletes to actor, advocate to artist, Eric Storick is one of evolution, purpose, and passion. So tonight, we dive into it all: the man, the mission, the meaning behind the journey. Eric Scanlan, welcome to the hot seat.
Hello,
What's
Eric.
up?
hello, everybody. Thank you guys for having me tonight.
Mhm.
Yeah, glad
Well,
to
we're
be
so
here.
excited to have you on.
Yeah, great to have you.
And thank you for the warm, flattering introduction. I
I feel
usually, when I
like
hear
we
that kind of
missed
stuff,
out
I
on
go
a
like this.
lot. I
No,
feel
you
like
guys
there's
got
more
plenty.
to it.
You guys got plenty. You guys got the highlights. You got the
Yeah,
highlights.
for those
And that's
who this is Eric's second try. We had so many issues last week of with Riverside, so we welcome him back this week.
So
no,
I
glad
have
to
to
be here,
ask you,
guys.
Eric. I have to ask you this. I've tried, like, I guess, well, actually, on Thursday, I had a hard time trying to pronounce one of our guests' name. And today, I didn't think I was gonna have a problem, but there was a part where you describe yourself as on your biography, half Palusami and half Dinijuan. Did I say that right?
It's
And what does that
diniguan.
mean?
It's diniguan. It's a dish from my mom's side of the family. She's Filipino. They're Ilocano and Pangasinan, and there's diniguan is like the pork blood
Mm.
that they cook with
Oh,
vinegar and sugar. So yeah, it's it's deep. It's a deep cut dish, and so yeah, I use that to talk about the varied experience and the varied background that I do have. Dad's from American Samoa, and mom was born. She's of Filipino descent, but born in Maui and raised on Oahu. And
Mm.
so that's
oh.
where a lot of those roots come from. They spent a lot of time in Hawaii, growing up in Hawaii. So on both my dad and mom's side of the family.
So grew up in Hawaii, I take it.
They grew up in Hawaii. So mom went and graduated from Sacred Hearts on Oahu, and dad's older brothers went to St. Louis. And my dad ended up moving to California with my grandparents, where he
Mhm.
stayed, and he ended up finishing up high school in uh, El Monte, California, the home of the Lions, where not that many Samoan people live. There's a tiny community over there, but yeah, it's a funny, interesting place. So he ended up staying out here in California until he finished high school, went to JC for a little bit, and then started playing music. That took him back to Hawaii, is where he went and connected with my mom later in his life.
So is that
And
how
we
you
have
got into music? Was through your dad's ex
so
experience?
yeah, mom and dad were always singing around the house. They were always practicing. I mean, I was a couple years old already when they, I think, had to put the music life behind them, because I remember as a kid, I was probably like 3 or 4 years old, and I remember a bunch of us kids. So there's my siblings, there's like eight of us. So I remember us traveling between Hawaii and LA as they were doing gigs in both places, but it just, from a cost effectiveness perspective, it just didn't make sense. They were just spending more money bringing us around. And so at a certain point, they had to stop and get other jobs and do something else. But yeah, they were always singing, they were always practicing. My sisters who sing as well, they were always singing around the home, and we always had music on like all the time. So it was a big part of growing
Wow.
up in my household.
And you got the good mix of both cultures. Just going back to the food thing. What other
Oh,
foods are out there? Growing up, I just love hearing that mixed family.
Mhm.
well, yeah, yeah. It was always like there was always lots of interesting, good, delicious, like just ethnic food, Samoan food, Filipino food. Sometimes we do Hawaiian food and kind of mix it up depending on where we were and if we had access to it. But yeah, we would always have good stuff going on in the house food wise. And for dad's side of the family, I knew a lot more of them. My mom's side of the family, I had both of my grandparents and all of my aunties and uncles and my first cousins. But beyond that, and I guess prior to that, didn't really know much of the family in the Philippines. So most
Mm.
of what I know on the Filipino side of the culture is comes through the food, which I learned from my grandmother, my mom's mom, Sally. Sally from the Valley. That's what we used to call her.
What was your favorite Samoan food, though?
Growing up, just from my grandmother coming over and visiting us every once in a while from Hawaii was kokolaisa. That was it. That
Coco
was
Lisa.
that was
Yeah.
my move. I was like, oh, just make me some cocoa rice and I'm good. I could have that for breakfast, lunch, dinner. I didn't
Yeah.
care. Yeah, that
Yeah.
I was just eat that all day. And so yeah, not any of the savory dishes. It was just cocoa rice. Which now
I,
thinking
I
about
like
it
that
later,
cold.
now I'm like, oh, it's probably because of the Filipino side too. That's probably why I like the rice so much.
I'll
Yeah.
say I prefer that cold usually when we come back from swimming, because usually leftovers in the refrigerator. That's the best time to have them. Is that cold Coco Lisa.
Uh,
Something
oh
about
yeah.
it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh
Wow,
yeah. Yeah.
Eric,
Yeah. That's
8 siblings. How so? So you mentioned family with music. It must have been a lot of noise, singing and performing, dancing, practicing. Were you the youngest in your family?
no. I'm number 6 out of 8. So I have
Mhm.
2 older brothers. I have 3 older sisters and 2 younger brothers. So all told, there's 8 of us. So yeah, it was. I can't. I do now. I have an appreciation for it now, but I didn't really. It wasn't like it was just normal having that many people in one place at one time. But as I have a family myself, and I have 3 children myself, and I know how spread out all the kids are. The kids kind of have their own space, and they kind of have their own bathroom, and me and my wife kind of have our own bathroom. I tell them, I was like, man, you guys are lucky. There was at one point all of us were sharing one bathroom all at the same
Hmm.
time, and so when we had to go somewhere, oh man, it was chaos. There's people brushing teeth, combing hair, brushing hair, putting makeup on, showering,
Mhm.
doing all that stuff all at the same time. So yeah, I have
Yeah,
an
everybody
appreciation
has
for
to
how
have a
to be able to do
limit of
things.
showering, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. You don't want to use all the hot water, and if you do, everybody's mad at you after that because they had to shower in cold water. Yeah, it
Mhm.
was it was pretty hectic, but it was a really enjoyable experience. But like I said, always full of all different types of music. And so as we went back and forth between LA and Hawaii, we spent most of the time in LA, always having the radio on and just listening to all these different types of music influences. There's a lot of R&B. So I mean, growing up in the '70s
Oh.
for us, it was like even in Hawaii. I mean, I although we had all the art, we had like Earth, Wind and Fire and Stevie Wonder. But even growing up at my dad's mom's house in Maili in Oahu on the west side.
Mhm.
Um, I remember as a kid, like a 3, 4 year old, just eating breakfast in the morning and like looking at the side of the little entertainment center, and there was a Stevie Wonder Hotter Than July album, and just staring at that, I'm like, huh, that's interesting hair. That's with the beads and everything. I was like, that's kind of cool. So yeah,
Mhm.
that's something that comes through just from a very early time. So a very early
Mhm.
memory about just being surrounded by music, like always, wherever we were.
What was your favorite genre?
Oh, it was R&B. I loved R&B growing up. So just I mean, between what my mom and dad and then my aunties who were in LA, I mean, it was like Luther Vandross and just listening to all these guys and just Mike. I mean, I was having a discussion the other day, and we're talking about the greatest decade of music. And so I was like, is it '80s? Is it the '90s? Is it the 2000s? And I had a younger gentleman tell me, he's like, oh, it's the 2000s. I was like, Okay, let me ask you a question. Between Thriller for Michael Jackson and Purple Rain from Prince, what two albums are you gonna put up against that? He was like, "Oh man, see that's cheating." I was like, "It is what it is." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so yeah, just remembering that time frame, early like '80s. I mean, when we got the Thriller album, we just played that. It would go from side A to side B, back to side A, back to side B until we wore the tape out, or until we broke the tape recorder. When we went through a couple tape recorders, so yeah, I'm sure like everybody else did growing up. Yeah.
You know, being with a lot of siblings, right? There's gotta be when I first met you, talking to you last week, I can
Hmm.
already tell a person that has a very good humor. And so, where did that come from for you?
So I talked to my mom and dad about this pretty frequently, and I'm like, I think I got part of the humor, the sensibility from dad, and part of it from mom. So dad's side of the family, the Samoan, the Scanlan side of the family, they're always just very silly and just joking around and loving to laugh, and the sense of humor can get kind of mean sometimes. Me and my brothers and sisters used to like. It was so me, but just watch somebody trip and just stuff like slapstick would throw us like out of control. But my mom's side of the family, the Molina side of the family, they were different. They were different, and so like the it was like really off the wall type humor to where my godfather is my mom's younger brother. His name is Marcelo Jr., but none of us called him that. Again, just kind of giving you an indication of what kind of like comedy that we were subject to. All of me and my first cousins, we never called him Uncle Marcelo. So like when one of the older nieces, so one of my older cousins, like when they were like 2, 3, 4 years old, they couldn't say Marcelo, so they called him Jack, and it just stuck. And so he was Uncle Jack for years and years and generations up until he passed last year. So just crazy stuff like that. But Uncle Jack and my mom's side of the family, they're off the wall. So that combination, I think, of those two types of sensibilities kind of merged in to where it's I'm the combination of that. For whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know, but it is what it is. Yeah. Love to laugh though.
Who would
Yeah,
you say
I
was the
tell you, it's a
most
go ahead.
talented out of you guys,
Mhm.
out of your siblings?
Oh,
I
man,
tell
you
you,
start fights.
laughter is a good medicine. So,
So he's talent. I mean, I would say so. My oldest sister, Nadia, actually, of all of us, as she was the oldest, she was probably the first that took to the arts, whether it be singing or whether it be acting. So, when she was in high school back in the '80s, she, took some headshots, got an agent, and booked a couple of shows, which were really cool. So, I mean, different strokes. She was on there. She played Willis's girlfriend
Oh
on
wow.
one episode. Yeah, she played his girlfriend on one episode, and being I knowing what her personality is, she's just like all of us. When something's really serious, I think she was ending one scene where she was like spying on. I think it might have been Janet Jackson and spying on like Willis's other love interest. Come to find out, she was like an undercover cop, and then so my sister comes around the corner and kind of does this type of deal. And then as the shot starts to fade to black, you start seeing her lights start to crack and start to laugh. And I'm like, man, look at you. You can't even keep a straight face when you're on set. So yeah, it was her earlier on, and then she sang and had a music career where she was touring kind of all over the world. And so I would say Sister Nadia led the way for
wow.
all the younger siblings.
All
You
these
know.
years, we've been watching because these comedies would come on or sitcoms, 80s and 90s. Yeah, no one even, at least in our household, knew of these. So yeah, good, interesting trivia for Samoan people who don't know.
Yeah. So my sister, so my mom and dad before they met each other, they had children. And my sister who's half black is from my mom's side of the family. But I mean it's my sister, so it's my sister is my sister.
Yeah.
And so and she was also, in addition to being like the first on the art side, she was also just, man, she was a pit bull. And so when she was walking us around and walking us home from school, she kind of she kind of ran around the neighborhood with a bit of a reputation, and so people knew not to mess with us because she would just scrap and just kind of go at it. And she was that one. That's who she was of the group. So that feistiness and that personality really came in handy for us.
Reminds me of my sister.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I love all those memories. Those are very precious to me. So, but yeah, so hopefully that addresses your most talented. She was the first, and she led the way.
Yeah, yeah. No, I had to ask because I know you come from a very talented family, so that's always a question. Okay, out of
Mhm.
all of you guys, which one, do you see as the most talented? So appreciate you answering that.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think the way, I mean, as she was older, she just kind of led the way for my other sisters to kind of like work up the courage to jump on stage and sing and do that. And so, between my other two sisters who sing and act as well, it's like, yeah, I think that gave them the courage to move forward. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, Eric, you actually did something else first before you got into acting. Was it because you got a full, well, wait, let me go back on that.
Okay.
You did sports. Were you the only one that jumped into the athletic side of your family?
No, I mean that my older sister, my man. I mean, everybody kind of played high school sports, but as far as college sports, I was the first of my siblings to play in the college level. So yeah, so I was the first one to get a scholarship out of my siblings, and um, yeah, it was an interesting experience, and being the first one to jump, I was just like, I'll go wherever, I'm good, man. And so making the jump over to North Carolina was interesting. It was a little bit tougher than I initially thought it would be. I was like, oh, I'm fine. It's just on the other side of the country. And then being away from my family, that was tough, right? That was harder than I imagined. We were very close and just shared everything. And then as my older siblings slowly started moving out of the house, I'm like, oh man, it's a trip. It used to be full. It used to be all of us, and then one by one, everybody's out, adulting and getting their own place and
Mm.
having kids, getting married, and all that. So when it was just me and my brothers left, when I left, I was like, oh, I should be fine. Like, I'm used to all the older siblings, but just not having the brothers around all the time and not being around all the friends that I grew up with, um, that was a little bit more difficult than I thought it would be.
Mm. I hear that a lot because especially with the younger siblings, right? Being used to having the whole gang together. How did you adapt to that when you moved on your own? How did you have to maneuver around the different type of lifestyle, not having family
Yeah,
around?
yeah, it was. I mean, it was difficult trying to find out something to fill that void because obviously, I mean, I had my hands full with
Mhm.
full class schedule and balancing the demands of that with being a scholarship athlete at a place like Duke is like, yeah, they're very high standards, and so I was busy. I had tons of things to do. It probably wasn't until actually, I think it might have been my second or third year at Duke. We had just been on a Thursday night game. I think we were playing Georgia Tech, and I had made a couple good plays, and so um, there was a gentleman there who lived in Durham and has been there for about 20 something years, I think, before I got there. And originally, I think, Arlington, you're talking about Leone. He's originally from Leone,
Huh.
and he's part of the Akui family. And so he
Mm.
was, these guys were like, I think one of the brothers at the time lived in Albuquerque, was watching the Thursday night game and was watching me play. And he was like, oh, Scanlan. I keep hearing that name. Well, he's doing pretty well. He's getting his name called a couple times during the game. So he called his brother and he was like, hey, is he? Are you do you know this kid? Do you guys have someone playing at Duke right now? He's like, oh, I don't know. I've never met him. And so at the time, he was working at a place that serviced both University of North Carolina and Duke and all the
Mm.
departments. And so they deliver floral arrangements and do parties and bring in all these big arrangements for all these big parties for all the departments for both universities. So they were busy almost 7 days a week. And so he happened to have the athletic director's wife's phone number. And he called her right after he spoke to his brother. And he was like, hey, Miss Butters, this is Issy. Do you have a Samoan kid on the football team? She's like, oh, yeah, he's from LA and his parents are great and blah, blah, blah. So he called me in my room on campus apartment, and then we got connected in that way. And then he was like an uncle to me the rest of the time there. So that kind of filled the void. So that kind of helped fill that void of not having all the family there. And I
Yeah,
still
that's
keep
what's
in touch
great
with
about.
him to this day.
No, I like what you mentioned there because that's what's great about the Samoan people, regardless of what state you go to. There's always going to be
Yeah,
that family that's out there that's always keeping an eye of the students, or whether even the military. They'll ask, what's the next
yeah,
shipment that's coming in, or who's so and so, and they'll actually come and visit you. So yeah, it's good to hear that.
yeah.
So,
And it was great. I mean, in my travels, I think we played the Army Academy once, and I happened to connect with a cousin of mine, Fred, Sergeant Fred Scanlan, and he came with his family afterwards, and he had a little baby girl, and she was like 2 years old, and she brought me a bag of soup. I was like, oh, thank you so much. I was like, oh, you guys didn't have to do that, but so it was nice being able to find connections out there in North Carolina while I was there.
And
so
I
when
was going to
did you?
ask,
Oh, go ahead.
about that
Go ahead.
time. Was that around the late nerd years, or was it before or after?
That was after. So when I came in my freshman year, I think Leitner and Grant Hill just graduated.
Mm,
So I just missed those guys, and it was an interesting time in Duke's sports history because I
right.
think Coach K hurt his back that fall of my freshman year,
Hmm.
and he had a fairly young team, and we had a really good football team, and so it was kind of like it was an upside down year for Duke sports, where Duke football was getting a lot of attention, which is pretty cool. We had a
Hmm.
lot of success on the field, and that was really cool, and that was cool for me because I was like, oh, I won a lot in high school, so that's the expectation is just work hard and have success.
Yeah.
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 What made you get into medical sales?
I just had a buddy of mine from that I went to high school with, played basketball with, and I think while I was in another industry, he's like, "Hey man, we have an opening on our team. You want to apply for it?" I was like, "Oh, tell me more." So he kind of told me
Mm,
about it, and I was like, "Oh, it's pretty interesting." And I interviewed for it, did pretty well, got the job, did pretty well, and continued to do well throughout my career. And that one thing led to another, and looking back on it, it's been almost 20 years
yeah,
that I've been
yeah.
doing it. Yeah, that I've been in the industry.
I'm wondering why you were doing this because I was told it was pharmaceutical sales, right? And did you also on the side do singing just for fun? Like going to the clubs or how there's always these gigs that everybody wants to still be a part of. Were you doing that still?
No. I sing in my car and I sing in the shower, but that's about it. That's the extent of my singing. Yeah. No, I wasn't getting paid to do any gigs. No, no. I happened into the entertainment industry about this is like 2017, about 2018, and it was just kind of it was a random thing. Actually, my oldest daughter, who is now 15, when she was like 6 7, very bubbly, great personality, and just was very friendly and very comfortable in front of people. We're like, we'll just have her do like a commercial or two or something really easy, and if not, if she does it, great, and if she gets it, great, and if not, whatever, right, no big deal. And so there was the independent project that came out as a Carson project that you mentioned earlier, and they're looking for to cast people for different characters. And so when we looked for my daughter, Tavai, it's like, well, that all of the characters were older, like 19, 20 years old, and she was
Hmm.
only 87 or 80. So obviously it's like way out of her age range.
Hmm.
So my wife, she's looking at the character descriptions for the dad character, and she's like, babe, who does this remind you of? And so I'm reading, and it was a former military, and it works down at the docks, and very like just rough exterior, but on the inside, just like a teddy bear, and who loves his daughters and is very protective of his daughters. And I was like, yeah, I was like, it seems like a great show. When it's done, I'd love to watch it, and I would absolutely tune in if it ends up being like a full blown show. She's like, you should try to go off for it. And I was like, why? And I was like, I've never done acting. I was like, I'm not in high school, not in college. Well, kind of in college, but not really. Um, I was like, why? And she was like, no, no, no. You can do it. I think you can do pretty well. And I was like, well, what makes you say that? She's like, well, at the end of the day, acting is storytelling. I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. So she's like, in your sales career, you've done a lot of communicating with lots of different people and lots of different positions and levels, and you kind of change the way you communicate every time, and so you're pretty good at it. I was like, hey, yeah, yeah, all right, keep going, tell me more. She's like also, and when um when my son was younger, and as the girls, I started having, I have three kids total, and as the kids came along, and I started reading to them at night, and just having
Mhm.
fun with whatever it is that I'm reading to them, and getting very into the characters, and just going like overboard and making it fun for them. She was like, "You jump into character anytime you read a book," and I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, you're right, you're right." And then she's like, and the last thing is, if you're still kind of on the ledge, she was like, at the end of the day, if you try this, if you do it and you don't get it, who cares? It's not that big
Mhm.
of a deal. She's like, but it's a really cool thing to say that you've done in your life. Like, hey, I auditioned for a cinematic part, right? Or
Mhm.
a independent movie or whatever it is. I was like, you're right, you're right. You basically like triple dog dared me, and now I can't say no. So I jumped into it. I did it. I had a great time, and it was a very enjoyable experience doing all those different roles. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Learned a lot.
How'd your uh how'd your daughter feel, being that it was the same casting that you guys both had gone to? How did she feel about that?
Well, she wasn't like she's very good. I think, and both of my daughters do a little bit. They're very good at it, but they're like, if I do it, I do it. If I don't, I don't. So they're just
Mhm.
that's kind of the attitude they take with it. They weren't like heartbroken or like, oh, Dad, you got it. I didn't. They're
Right.
like, yeah, okay. It's just I can go back to playing and
Yeah.
drawing and doing whatever I was doing before. So that was kind of their reaction to it.
Mm.
But as I've gone on to the different parts, I kind of share what the experience is with them. And in one sense, they're like, "Oh, that's cool," and in another sense, they're like, "Okay, all right, now I got to go back to my thing that I was doing." They're 15 and 10 now, so they're just like they're not that impressed.
Yeah, but it still opens up that opportunity now that you've,
Mhm.
gotten in, when those opportunities come, it also, it's available to them, right?
Yeah, if they want to. I mean, it's a kind of thing where it's like for whatever it is that they want to do, and I think for me, it's just a general like dad perspective that I've kind of developed over the years. If it's something, and this is something that I just saw growing up, when there were people who really wanted to do something and they were very passionate about it, you don't have to convince them or sell them to kind of like get after it. But
Mhm.
when there are people who are doing things because mom and dad told them to do it,
Mhm.
it's like, oh, you gotta, it's like pulling teeth, and it's kind of miserable. And so
Mhm.
at a young age, I always said, I was like, man, if I ever have kids, I'm not going to force them to do stuff that they don't want to do. I'm going to let them find what they really want to do so they can kind of get after it themselves. And so, as far as, whatever it is, whether it be show business or, pursuing a specific career, look, I just want you to find out what you're fired up about and what you're interested in, and I want you to get
Mhm.
after it. I don't want to tell you, oh, this is what dad did, so you have to do it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's hard. I mean, it's not an easy thing. It's a very difficult
Yeah.
thing to kind of pursue. So whatever it is that they want to do in life, it's like as long as it's coming from within, I'm cool with it. And they want to chase it, I'm fired
Mhm.
up.
Good. Yeah.
Do do you feel like the your professional field in medical sales is a lot more difficult than the acting?
No, I think they're different. I think they're different pursuits. I mean, in one sense, they're both very grindy. I think
Mhm.
as I started getting accruing more experience on the acting side, I came to understand just kind of how grindy it can really be. I think there's a perception of it being really glorious and everybody's just
Yeah.
right. And it's just a
Yeah.
great old time and everybody's hanging out. I mean, there is a part of it that where that is true, but there's a big component of it where it's just very grindy. It's like you prepare, you grind, you work, you get ready for any situation that comes your way, and you perform, and then things change, so just be ready to adjust and deliver and pivot. So in that way, I guess there are some similarities between sales because you have to do the same thing. But
Yeah.
but yeah, it is a very grindy thing. I mean, at one point, one of my summer jobs that I had when I was in college is I clean airplanes. It wasn't the most glorious summer job, but it kind of reminds me of making film and TV. It kind of reminds me of that. It's just very grindy. There's stuff
Mm.
moving around. It's dangerous. There's plugs and power cords, and there's all kind of stuff, big heavy machinery being moved around all over the place. So yeah, it's very industrial. It's a very industrial job, but it is really fun too. So yeah.
Yeah, a lot going on behind the scenes. Also, can we go to the comments? I hate to
Oh,
leave some of our
sure.
viewers commenting here before we get too far. Okay. Yeah, from Janet. Hello, Pulse of Polynesia family, and welcome, Eric Scanlan. Okay. Thank you, Janet.
Hi, Janet.
Mm. Oh,
I was
we
going to
have
say,
another.
I came across something I was looking at. It seemed like some consortium where it was a group of actors, something about sharing about Pacific Islands, and it was run through Netflix. Do you recall?
Oh, I think was that a fairly recent post?
I'm not sure when it was posted, but I think it's like a collection of all the actors, and you had
Yeah.
Randall.
So
Yeah.
if what you're referring to, if it's a Peak PEAK,
Mm-hmm.
was that what you saw? So
Yeah.
Peak Pacifica, it's a group of Pacific Islanders based in Hollywood that are in industry that really do advocate for increased representation, kind of on all
Mm-hmm.
fronts, both in front of camera and behind camera. And so
Mm,
I think what you saw was a post kind of highlighting a group of fellows of writers that were chosen to receive some mentorship, and I think they did some of the programs over at Netflix. So that's awesome, and I know maybe about half of them, half of the writers that are the fellows this year. So I'm proud of everything that they're doing and all the opportunities that they're getting, and it's important. It's important. One of the things I kind of picked up in my experience as well is that there's so much talent out there,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of it is just not represented. Um, it really is the tip of the iceberg. I think you've not seen the full scope of what Pacific Islanders can do on camera.
Right.
I mean, and I've loved the cinema from New Zealand and seeing that, and even some of the
mm,
things that the local projects that are coming here out of Southern California and Hawaii. It's amazing, and there's a lot of talent, and we're still only scratching the surface. So it's amazing to see kind of what comes next. So for
Right.
organizations like Peak Pacifica out of I think they're mostly based out of LA. Um, they do great work, and I've attended some of their meetings as well, and it's a great environment to
Mm-hmm.
network together and get to know all these folks.
Yeah, I love that. I was just reading through it and it's like, yeah, that's exactly what we need to get our voice out there. We
yeah.
definitely need that recognition. So great work.
Yeah, yeah. So I know. I mean, Crit. I've met him before, and he does a lot of work in advocating for that organization. As does Dana, who is a writer and director, and she just directed the animated the Moana 2, and wrote
Wow.
for I think Moana live action. So it's great to see them continue to push the boundaries and increase opportunities for others, both in front of and behind camera. So I'm
Mhm.
excited.
Mhm.
I'm excited at all the opportunity that presents.
Yeah. There's these other two famous podcasters out there. I think they were also looking for opportunities if they exist, right, Lasso? I
Yeah.
think they're part of the Pulse of Polynesia crew.
Hint, 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 hint. But
That
yeah, if
was a
you guys
total
are,
joke.
yeah, if you
No,
guys
we
are
were joking on
ever in
side, Eric.
LA,
We
yeah,
think we
they
can
have
do
the
good in Hollywood.
well, Peak Pacifica has they have meetings, occasional get-togethers and mixers, and so I would highly advise kind of checking and staying on top of what the page offers and in the way of different like programming they have. I think they do it maybe once a quarter, once a quarter or so, but that seems to be like their frequency that they have those events. So I would love to see you guys at the next event in LA.
Yeah,
Interesting.
there
Yeah.
you go, Lasso. Got to give it a shot.
Oh,
Let's
that's
get
if
those
Jason
buckets
Momoa needs an extra.
encouragement.
We have another comment on here,
Okay, what do we have
Arlington.
here?
Yeah.
I think it's great how your wife identified the quality of skills in you and encouraged you to step out and take the opportunity to try out for acting the role. Yeah,
Acting role, yeah.
yeah, for the acting
Did
role.
my
Yeah,
wife did my wife write that?
that's from Janet.
Okay.
Oh, we have another
Thanks,
comment
Janet.
from, yeah, from Margaret. Here's another comment.
Okay. Yeah, I remember being at work while watching Hawaii Five O, and I saw you, and was ecstatic. Starting following you and your work. Proud of what our Polynesians are doing out there. Thank you, Margaret.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Margaret. Yeah, it was a great experience working on the set with 50. Beula Kwale, who plays my son, does great work. Excellent actor. I just saw him in the film that was shown out here at the Directors Guild in Hollywood not that long ago, maybe a little over a month ago. Tina, out of New Zealand. What a
Hmm.
wonderful film. I don't know if you guys have had an opportunity to see
I
that
haven't
yet.
seen it yet. I'm looking forward to, getting a
I don't
chance
want
to watch that.
to. I don't want to spoil it, so I'm not going to say anything about it other than it's outstanding. But Beulah was in, and Beulah played my son in 50. Just a phenomenal actor, and great being able to kind of work alongside him. And from a personal standpoint, my dad's older brother, Uncle Raymond Scanlan, he was involved in the film industry for many years in Oahu. Mostly, he was a Oahu-based
Mhm.
teamster, and so he had worked on countless number of sets for different films and TV projects that had gone on during the uh, like late '70s, early '80s, mid '80s. So he was there and working on the crew for the original Magnum PI.
Mm.
And so to be able to, I remember having one of the gentlemen come up to me, I think on the second episode I was on, and he tapped me on the shoulder. He was like, "Hey, Eric, I'm looking at the call sheet and it says Eric Scanlan. Is that you?" I was like, "Yeah, that's me." He's like, "Oh, I knew your uncle. Ray, I'd love to talk to you at
Oh,
lunch." And so we
Wow.
shared some stories and some uplifting things. It's conversations that they had had when my uncle was still alive. And so coming back to Hawaii, and if you've ever lived there for a time, it always feels, there's a part of it that feels like home. And so being able to come back, and I only have great memories of Hawaii. And I remember coming back during the summers as a kid, and it was just always a great memories associated with it. So just even flying into Oahu, I was like, yeah, it felt pretty good. It felt pretty good to come in. And so just that, in addition to just working with great cast and great crew for 50, I had a great experience. So great memories associated with that time and that experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like, I grew up watching like the old one, right? The first Hawaii Five O. I
mhm.
can imagine for you having experienced that, and then to be on the follow up show. Must be a great feeling.
Yeah, it was great, and to be able to represent, be a representative for us, not by no means the beginning and the end, but just to play a part
Right.
in showing that there's more to it than just we're human beings, we have emotions, we have flaws, and
Yeah.
we have problems that we try to work out the best we can. They don't always work out that way, but it was great to have that opportunity and be part of that, to show
Mhm.
that we're more than just the 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 gangster or the I mean there tends to be a limited knowledge of what it is that we are, and so as we're
Yeah.
portrayed in certain roles, they just don't know. So it's like, well, that's why it's important for groups like Peak to continue to push and have representation and have opportunities to kind of tell more of our story.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but again, it was a great experience. So I was grateful for it.
There's got to be a time where you broke character in one of your scenes. Can you tell us that? Where you just broke down and start laughing. This-
Well, on 50, one of the scenes that Beulah and I were working on, we were working in the back of a home, and there was a deck that we were rebuilding, and I think the line was, um, "My music, my deck." And as I said it, I started thinking about it because I know Beulah's from New Zealand, and with the accent, it's like dick and deck is like the same word. And so I was trying not to. It must have been like a micro expression or something that caused him to crack. But I remember I said, "My music, my deck," and then he was like, and it took us a little. It took us about 5 minutes to get it together because we kept trying to recover and get back to it, and we just kept laughing. So it took about 5 minutes for us to get it together. But eventually, we got back on track. But I knew that he was thinking of it. My wife was raised in New Zealand, and so I know that the accent it was running through his mind, and he was like trying hard not to think about it. So that was one of them. Yeah, yeah. And again, for me, it was like I'm glad it didn't last any longer because just knowing who I grew up with for my siblings, it's like the dumbest things would kind of trigger us and make us like laugh. Um, yeah, and that was probably the worst onset thing that we had when I did the actual auditions for an on-screen part for the next goal wins for Taiko. There
Yeah.
were a couple lines in there that are just hilarious. They're really funny, and I remember my son was helping me to audition for those. He was filming my audition, and he kept cracking up. He kept breaking during my audition because just some of the lines that I was having to deliver were so funny. He couldn't keep a straight face. He's like, "Dad, I'm sorry, I'm trying, but it's pretty funny." I was like, "Well, ended up being a pretty good movie." So yeah,
It
I'm
is.
glad he
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
I
you
was
were to
gonna
look
ask
back in
you
your, oh, sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
the name Atta Scanlan, right? Wasn't he on Murder She Wrote back in late '80s or maybe early no like '90s maybe? Is that one of your relatives, Atta?
I've had one of the casting agents that works out of Oahu asked me the same question, and I believe I was like, as far as I know, we're all related. I've never met him personally, but there's as time goes on, I'm just starting to meet more and more family members that are actually in the industry. Actually, during the Next Goal Wins, we did a dubbing looping group up at the Warner Brothers Studios in Burbank. And one of the gentlemen who was there, come to find out we're related, but surprise, surprise, right? That happens all the time.
Mhm.
So only seems fitting that that happens in our industry as well.
Yeah, I
But
know
yeah.
because I remember I was still in Samoa at the time,
Mm.
early '90s, and somehow the word got back because he was my brother's classmate, and I guess his classmates, everyone knew that the show was coming up, and they said, "Watch this Sunday, it's gonna come." He has a part in there, and I think he was like a gardener or something like that.
Oh,
It,
nice.
it was just like the feeling, like, hey, finally, someone we know, it's
Yeah,
on TV. So yeah,
yeah, yeah. Um, Yeah, it's just over time, as my uncle's been in the industry, and I got to know a couple different people in the industry slowly, gradually. Even before I got into it, I really did appreciate seeing the Islander faces on screen. Right, for me, it was even before Dwayne kind of came into his fame with his movie roles. Even before
Yeah.
he was doing wrestling, I remember watching like action movies back in the late '80s, early '90s, and it was Bob Apisa that was doing a lot of the stunt work back then,
Wow.
and he was in a lot of the movies. And my dad saying, "Oh yeah, he's someone." Like my dad always pointed, "Oh, he's someone. He's from here and this from this family, and he played football
Wow.
at Michigan State." And I was
mm,
like, "Dad, how do you know the bio on all these guys?" He's like, "Oh, because of so and so, so and so." I was like, "Oh, okay, whatever."
right.
Yeah, that became a little bit more tuned into that as I got older. So yeah, I was always happy to see Islander faces up on screen. It's always cool.
Mm.
Yeah. You've been acting in so many different movies and had so many different roles. What was the difficult for you, and what was the difficult, most challenging that you had to take part in?
Um, I would say I would say they're all challenging in different ways.
Hmm.
Part of just developing as an actor is just being prepared for
Yeah.
anything. And so if you have it set in your mind that you're going to do something a certain way, or you have a very clear idea of who the character is, and you rehearse it in that way, and um, not knowing at the very beginning of my career, I would kind of rehearse it that way, and I'd only do it that way. But as I came to find out as my career went on, I was like, I need to practice it any number of ways, because the reality of it is on set, if my approach for this character, or he's very stern, okay, he's very stern, and he really doesn't like being around people. So if you get too
Mm,
close to him, he's going to start getting really reactive. And that's the way I
mm,
had it set in my mind. And all of a sudden now we get on set and the director's like, hey, you know what? You're a people person. Okay. You love everybody. You're really touchy feely.
mm.
If you're not able to kind of pivot like that, you're doing yourself a disservice to not kind of practice it a number of different ways. So I came to kind of get better and improve in that way.
Wow.
So I think the earlier it was in my career, the probably the more difficult it was.
Yeah.
um, and I would say, just from a personal standpoint, I think there's always a bit that you can interject into the role. Some of the things that I like to do is just kind of interject parts of my personality into the role,
Yeah.
and make it more unique than it was when it first appeared on paper. The harder ones for me are when that character's personality goes counter to what mine is, and that I mean, it's doable, and it's not impossible. Just I feel like I have to work a little bit harder.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, for example, if I had one, it's like, you hate kids and you're very disrespectful to your parents. It's like, okay, all right, let me figure out a reason why that is
Yeah.
and
Did
justify it
you
in my
have
mind, and
to,
then go from there.
sorry, did you have to bring character home just because you didn't want to lose that perspective of how you have to keep?
No, I purposely kind of like separated myself. And I think everybody's different. Everybody kind of has a
Yeah.
different process, and whatever works for you works for you. That's fine. But I personally can't do that.
Yeah.
I just,
Good.
whatever I'm done with. After, as soon as they yell cut and I'm done, I'm walking off the set, I'm done, and I wash my hands of that character, and I leave it behind on set, um, and come back to it when I need to. But I think if you're doing enough work, as far as I'm concerned, my own personal view is, if you're doing enough work beforehand, and hopefully you have enough time to rehearse in the weeks or days before you get the role, you're doing enough work to where you know where you need to be.
Mhm.
I couldn't bring it home with me and stay in character like night after night, week after week. I just don't know if I have the emotional stamina to do
Yeah.
that. Yeah, yeah,
I can
especially if it's
see
if
like,
it's not in a positive headspace.
yeah, I can see it could take a mental toll on someone, having to take that home and stay in character, and how it can mess things up within, your environment when you come home with taking that to your family. So,
Yeah, yeah, and the heavier things are a little bit harder. So I would say, yeah, I just found out, for me, and just working with various coaches, it worked out best, and the better in advice that I got was to kind of leave it there and leave it behind, and make sure you do as many things after the performance that are authentic to me, versus something that I associate with the character. So if my character hated sports, I love sports in real life, I'm watching like a lot of sports. After the yell cut, I'm watching a good 3 hours of ESPN to make sure it's just like, hey, I'm back, and I'm leveled, and I'm back on my feet again, and back in touch with reality.
which takes me to another question, I could tell, I could see already, your family is very supportive of your career. How do they keep you grounded?
If there's something that my family's good at, it's at keeping me grounded. Being the number 6 out of 8, there was never any prestige about being the sixth oldest. So as far as my siblings are concerned, it's like, you know, it was always a thing of like, how can I serve? How can I help? And that's always kind of been my role and my mindset. And so that doesn't change. As far as my immediate family, my wife and my kids, I'm there for them. And at the end of the day, it's a job. And so when the job is done, I'm back home, and I'm just doing regular dad/husband stuff. So keeping me
Mm.
grounded, it's very easy to do when you have people who are very good at keeping you grounded around.
You
Grounded
know,
but supportive.
I had to ask,
Yeah.
what's the most challenging for you? Pigeon speak or Samoan fob speak? Out of those
Oh,
two.
Um, neither, neither. They're both pretty
You
easy.
can
We've
handle
done so
both.
many. Yeah, you just growing up boy, it's like that comes pretty easy, and just falling into it is very easy to fall into the pitch. It's like wow, getting into it. And I got so many cousins still there, and I think from a very early age, my brothers and I were very good at listening and picking up on accents, and so that's something that we developed over time and just joking around. We do it all the time.
Hmm.
And so just hearing that and listening to that, we were very good about that and picking up accents. So whether it be that or, I said my wife is from New Zealand too. And so we would always just joke. I mean, just watching Once We're Warriors. And I'm sure like a lot of other
Yeah.
Islander kids, like watching that, we happen to be quoting things from that and, as like in a joking way, which is not cool. It's a very harsh, serious movie,
Or
but like I can't tell you how many times I've heard at a party, we're starting to get hungry. We're in the kitchen and we're kind of fishing around for food, and we're like, "This make the men some eggs," and we're pulling out the New Zealand accent. So it's like at any given time, we're pulling out any number of different accents, and so going,
don't forget
going,
the
going.
song. What's
Oh,
the
oh yeah,
time?
yeah. Oh, what's
What's the time,
Oh,
Mister?
I busted that out the first time I went to New Zealand. The first with my oldest daughter was a baby. We went and I visited, and I got in on the driver's side, on the right side of the car. I was like, "Oh, what's the time?" I had to. I had to. I had to. I had to, and it was red too. I think the rental car was
Oh
red
yeah,
too,
his
so
car was
I
red.
had to.
Yes.
Yeah, I had to
Oh
go. What's the
man.
time? What's the off? Is it 1 o'clock? No. 2 o'clock? No. 3 o'clock?
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So like a lot of other Pacific Islander kids who seen that movie, I joked about it. So
Mhm.
yeah.
I think the fob talk would be the hardest one to maintain because I think I would just constantly laugh after every line.
Well, also it also I think it depends on who you have on set with you,
Mhm.
and and what kind of material you're doing. I think that's got to be harder to do, harder to keep a straight face on a
Right.
comedy. I had friends who were doing um, that. I think it was his next goal. Yeah, it was next goal wins with Tycho. And I asked them, I was like, man, what is it like being on set? They're like, dude, it's tough. It's tough keeping a straight face. I was like, yeah, I can imagine. And that I shared my experience about doing the auditions with my son and him having
Mhm.
a hard time just like keeping it in. Or he
Right.
was like covering his mouth and he's still like blowing air out of his hands, doing that kind of stuff. Yeah. So that's I think that's probably got to be harder, especially with in a comedy surrounded by other islanders. That's probably got to be the hardest.
How
Yeah.
does your family feel when they watch you on TV? Like, do they have their own? Do they critique your work? Do they give you advices or?
See, the funny thing about it is that it's kind of a family affair when they're helping me do my auditions. My oldest daughter takes the lead. She knows how to set up the lights. She knows how to set up the cameras, and she knows where to stand. And she'll ask me how she wants, to be and like how should she read the lines, and I'll kind of give her an idea. So they're along for the ride from the very beginning. So seeing it is kind of interesting. I think they probably see it a lot like I see it. It's just interesting. It's interesting to see the finished product and what that looks like with really nice lighting and professional editing and coloring and the sound and the music all behind it. It's a great finished product, but they were able to see that from the beginning. So I think that's it's kind of a cool thing to see it transform from just here in my house to what it looks like as a finished product.
Do you see yourself doing acting for so many years to come? Maybe 5, 10, 15, 20.
It's an interesting pursuit. Something that I noticed again, I harken back to it. I am like amazed and blown away by how many talented performers there are out there. I enjoy acting, but I also enjoy creating as well. So on the writing side of it, on the directing side of it, I'd like to kind of create some projects moving forward and just introduce those and afford the opportunity for these super talented performers. Um, and give them an opportunity to shine in a number of different ways, through comedy and through some different opportunities, but mostly like in a comic format.
What would you tell
So
these Polynesians out? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no. Yeah, so just yeah, that's something that I have my eye on moving forward. If I happen to be in the project, I can do the I joked around with my dad when I first started this. I was like, my dream role is. He's like, what? I was like, my dream role is, and I say this on the heels of watching all the original Magnum PIs episodes with him. He's like, Eric, what's your dream role? And of course, I'm giving him a stupid answer. It's not a serious answer. I'm like, my dad, my dream role is I want to be fruit cart guy. And he's like, what's a fruit cart guy?
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know if you remember this, Dad, but watching at Magnum PI and watching all the end credits, they'd always have chase scenes where the main character Magnum is driving through the streets of Honolulu, and they come through like an alleyway, and then they come up to a guy who has a fruit cart, and the very last minute he like runs away and the fruit
Oh,
explodes, and then they have that freeze frame where the guy's like this and the fruit's in the air. I was like, I want to be fruit cart guy. And I want to come in once an episode and be like, damn you, Thomas Magnum, or whatever character it is. That's it. Cruise, easy. I was like, I like, I'm a weirdo in the sense that I'm not like a real spotlight guy. I don't feel the need to be out in front and center. I don't care. Like I enjoy having a good time. I enjoy creating, but I don't need to be front and center. So I actually derive much more joy from. I think it's part of my personality, but also probably part of the culture of how I grew up. I grew up in L.A. I was a big Lakers fan, a big Magic Johnson fan, and
Yeah.
I very much so admired the way that he facilitated and made the people around him better, and in doing that made the team better. And
yeah.
so, from a creator mindset, that's kind of where I'm at. And that's where I feel happiest and most content. And so, being able to play that kind of role in that way would be the most rewarding to me.
Tell us about the movie Feely. What, share with us about Feely.
Yeah. So, one of the interesting things about that movie is when I told you my dad moved to El Monte as they moved from Samoa to Hawaii to El Monte. As I first was speaking with the young writer director Peter Filimao, who wrote that project and who's going to direct that project, I was talking to him, I was finding out more about who he was, and we did like a Zoom call. Come to find out like where he was from, and Peter's like, "Oh yeah, I'm from El Monte originally." I was like, interesting. You say that." I was like, "What's your background, Peter?" He's like, "Oh, I'm Samoan and Mexican." I was like, "Interesting." I was like, "You wouldn't happen to be related to to this family?" And he was like, "Oh." He's like, "Man, how did you know that?" I was like, "Oh, because when my dad first moved, there was the Scanlans and the Olatoa family, and they were the only two Samoan families in El Monte. This is back in like the '60s.
Mm.
And after my grandfather passed, a lot of my family, the Scanlans, they went back to Hawaii. My dad stayed, but most of the family went back. But the Olatoas, they stayed in that area, and they intermarried with a few Mexican families. And so there is like a bunch of Samoan Mexicans in that El Monte area that are related to the Olatoa family that my dad grew up across from when he was in high school. And so it was kind of a cool thing to figure out that common history with Peter. And so we talked more about the project, and he said basically this is going to be a project about a young man who has a lot of potential as a football player, but his true passion is for acting. And your role as the dad is to be the very gruff, rough, traditional, former football star that is having a hard time making that adjustment. And so just being able to pull from some personal experience, but also just being able to understand kind of where the character was from. And I really enjoyed it, and I had a great time performing with the actors and on set, and Peter as the writer and director of that film. So it was a great project. It was very very emotional, and I really enjoyed it.
Okay. So was Feely what we were talking about earlier on in the podcast? I want to make sure because I thought we were talking about a different movie, but if we were referring to the same one, sorry for asking the same question.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no,
Was the
Feely
guy
was.
auditioning for Feely earlier on, or
Yeah, no. Feely was something I did kind of like more recently,
okay?
and that was that I played the role of a dad who was a he was a an ex-football star who got injured, so he never really fully realized his potential, and he
Mm,
was kind of living vicariously through his son, who was essentially growing up to be the second coming of him, and he wanted to be an actor, and so that was that project. Feely Carson was something different. Carson
Mm,
was where I played the gruff dad, but very similar in some ways. Those characters, right? Very rough on the outside. I think the Philly character, as I played the dad in that project, he was probably a little bit more harsh, mostly because he had a son and not a daughter.
mm.
Yeah, and I see how that is in real life too, because I have a oldest son and I have a daughter, and I have two daughters, and I very much so treated them differently as smaller
mm.
children, and so I know the challenges that come from that, right? But
Yeah,
those are
I see
different.
you in some of your photos. What was the character that the Tongan kid that plays the younger Rock? Yeah, I can't remember his name. The on the
Oh,
Rock episode. Yeah,
Uli Latskefu.
yeah. Have you done some work with him?
No, I met him. I actually met him. That was at one of the peak events. And
Mm,
so, great guy. And we just were talking about some of the people that we knew in the industry. And I think he's from Australia. And so, just knowing some of the guys from New Zealand, Australia that he's kind of heard of and worked with before, just kind of comparing notes and talking about some of the projects that he's been on. So, it was great. It was great to meet him.
yeah. No, it's good to
Yeah.
see you making connections with a lot of these known faces and just getting your name out there. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, if it's a thing where we can do work together, either on screen acting, or if it's something that I'm going to have an opportunity to create a project and have any number of different talented actors come on board, I'd love to be able to do that because, like I said, there's so much story left to tell that hasn't been
Mm.
told. It like it's literally endless. I mean, there are some challenges, there are some headwinds that have come about over the last probably 2-3 years, but the fact remains there's still a lot of story to tell.
Mhm.
So if any way, shape, or form I can be involved in that, especially behind the camera, I'd love to do that. At the very end, if I jump in and I'm a fruit cart guy and I can make my own fruit cart explosion scene, even at the very end of the ending credits and do a freeze frame, then that's cool. I'm cool with that.
If it takes
Uh,
for me to
uh,
be in the fruit side just to be close to Jason Momoa, I'll do the same thing.
We're gonna have a fruit cart one, fruit cart two. We may have multiple fruit carts. Yeah, so
have you ventured in producing or directing?
yeah, I'm interested in possibly doing some directing down the road, and so I've kind of started to write a couple of projects, and so as I'm coming toward the end of it and just refining those on the script side, I'd love to be able to start actively looking to direct and get those projects done.
Okay, cool. No, I have some ideas. Wanting to run by someone, so we'll talk offline on that.
Okay, okay,
Cultural wise, I think it's always been interesting in my mind just to know like the right person to hand it over to them and let them run with it.
yeah. No, I'd love to talk about it afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt pressure to tone down your cultural identity in Hollywood?
No, it's so in one sense, it's really hard to hide. There's like as soon as they see my face, they're like, "Oh, you must be Pacific out there." So
Mm,
there's no hiding from that. There's like, "Oh, yeah,
yeah.
okay, well,
Mm,
there's no hiding or masking that at all." Um, Hiding it, I don't think is the challenge. I think really it's being able to it's really looking for opportunities to show that and kind of go deeper with it. And that's the biggest challenge. And like I've seen, like I said, there's a few stories and a few productions that are out there that, either between, what Dwayne is heading and what Jason's heading, those are great, and those are phenomenal, monumental projects. But there's still so much ground left to be covered. I mean, we really
Mm,
are just in the appetizer phase, and there's a whole menu that we haven't even gotten to. So I'm just
mm.
very excited to see what the future holds.
Hmm. I agree.
Yeah.
Arlington, we got a question.
Yeah, we got one here for you. What are some of the difficulties you had to face in your journey as an actor?
I would just say, geez, as a Pacific Islander male that grew up in the '70s and the '80s, and just being comfortable with sharing feelings, that's a
Hmm.
very real thing, and being open to that. Um, I think part of just growing as a human being is being able to do that and being able to have that conversation and still move past that and move forward with it and be okay. And so a lot of the characters that I played, which are very like stern and harsh and rigid, that I mean, as much as I was acting, there's still parts of that that actually are me. And so being
Hmm.
able to kind of break through and
Yeah.
fight actively against that and reveal and open up, that's probably one of the more difficult things. And again, like I said, in addition to that, it's just being able to be comfortable with things that are so opposite of who I am, and coming up with a good story in my head to kind of justify why that is.
Mm. Have you
Yeah,
had
those
to
are
turn
probably the
down?
most.
Oh, sorry. Have you
Oh, go
had to
ahead.
turn down? Have you had to turn down an opportunity for one of an acting role, and you just said, absolutely no, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah, and I let my agent know it's like these are the things that I'm interested in, and but please understand that I'm not interested at all costs. All right, it's not like I there are limits as to what I'm going to do. And so let's make sure we're on the same page. And so luckily, my agent, as I've gone through my career, anytime there's an opportunity that came up, she'd present it to me and go, Eric, I already know what the answer is, but I just want to make sure we're on the same page. And I'd look at it. And if it fell into that area where I said, absolutely not, it's like, well, no, we're not going to do that. Then
That's
that's
good.
what we did. And she's like, okay, I just want to make sure we're on the same page and we're good. As long as we're on the same page, I'm good with it. And so I would pass on those things. And a lot of it has to do
That's
with, for
good.
me, it's like as opposed to a lot of actors who start at a very young age and are doing this, are like child actors, and they break in when they're 14, 17 years old, and continue on and start to break out in their 30s and 40s. I started this when I was in my 40s.
Mm,
So I was already a fully grown ass man, coming into it, and I have kids and I'm married, and so it's like at the end of the day, if it's something that I'm okay with my kids seeing on screen, I'm cool,
Hmm.
right? Then I'm
yeah.
good with it, and if they can look at it and be proud, and I'd be like, Dad, what are you doing, right? Um,
Mm.
for all intents and purposes, those are the parameters that I set up, and so long as I'm comfortable with it, my agent's comfortable with it, and I'm good with it.
Do
But
you
yes, I
wish
have
that
had to
you?
say things.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was like, but at the end of the day, I have had to say no to a couple of roles.
Mm. I have to ask, in regards to talking about saying no to these roles, do you think it would have been different had you been if you were single? Would you have chose to say yes?
That I mean, I think there's two things. If I was younger and single, that definitely probably would have changed my mind
Hmm.
about it. I mean, because I wouldn't have had to had those considerations like, oh, what
Yeah.
about my kids? Because it's like, before I had kids, I was like, it's later. It's
Mm.
gonna happen later. I have no idea.
Nobody's thinking about that.
Um,
Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. But
Hmm.
I've talked about it with friends, and I think my experience in the industry and coming into it at a later age definitely shaped kind of how I approached it and what
Yeah.
the experience was. Because I think it could have been way different if I would have started this when I was like just out of college, just graduated,
Yeah.
no responsibilities, and it would have been a different, yeah, like from A to Z, it would have been a different experience.
Yeah.
Right, and it's probably for the better
Yeah.
that I did it
Yeah.
the way I did it, and not another way. So
Yeah.
and so not to speak.
Yeah.
I was like, not, yeah, not to speak, in any way about anybody doing it a different way. that's just the way I did it, and
Mhm.
I'm glad it went the way it went because I probably would have been a hot mess if I did it another way.
Trying to delete all the past, but you can't because it's on there.
Right, right,
Don't look
right,
at
right. Yeah.
that. That's not
Yeah, I
me.
mean, we didn't really have social media back then. It wasn't really that big of a deal back then, so
Right.
might have been okay. But just personally, I'm glad it went the way it went.
Hmm.
What about
Speaking
the
about this, right? We always look to the past and we talk about like I brought this up before in a podcast about how we don't understand or know the future unless we look back in our past and connect the dots. Do you think that those dots are now connected to now it makes sense to your present of how your life has turned out to be?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think all the decisions build upon each other and bring you into a much different place. I mean, where I was at the beginning of my acting career is just night and day between where I was when I graduated from college. Just
Hmm.
radically different person, radically different circumstances, and so I think I would have made radically different choices. So for sure, that has a lot to do with it. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Good.
yeah?
I have a question. There's a question for him, Arlington.
Oh,
Oh, well, actually, a shout out.
Sean, aloha, talofa, everybody. Aloha, Eric Scanlan from Molokai, Hawaii. Nei. There you go.
Here's
That
another
sounds
one.
Right
good.
on, right on. Okay, I've not been yet. I've not been yet. I would still love to visit. I'd love to come to Molokai and check it out. I've heard only wonderful things.
There we got this follow-on. What is your advice to those that are interested in pursuing acting as a career?
Mm.
Yeah, I would say just get some exposure to it. I think as I've gotten through and experienced and learn what the profession is versus what you think it is. There's a lot of things that are expected, and I think like anything, before jumping into any industry, it's like investigate it, like research it, and actually try to learn, like take some classes, see if you actually like it. Because you could say, "Oh, I
Mm.
want to be on camera. I can do this, and I'm handsome, and I'm beautiful, and I can do." It's like get in front of a group of people and perform something and perform it from the heart. And you just may find that it's like I
Mm.
hate that, right? Because there are people who do that. There are people who come to class and they have this idea of what it is, and they come to find out it's actually like it's a ton of work, and it's
Hmm.
very grindy and
Yeah.
it's very demanding, and it demands that you open up and reveal and you work on skill sets that are important for acting, and it's a lot of work and it's a lot of preparation and it's thankless and it's very punishing in the way that the industry does, and the opportunities are few and far between. But if that's something that, in spite of all that, if there's some value that you can find in that, well, then you may want to continue on with it and just keep fighting
Right.
forward. But to just come into it and go, oh, I'm going to be a star. It's like, well, you got to, I don't think that works in any industry, to be
Yeah.
honest. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I
And
would say take classes.
people think to look at the surface and not understanding there's a lot of layers that comes to creating that part of the glory part, the glamour and everything. And if you mentioned that it was your wife that helped so how did you prepare for your first audition? I don't know, you probably mentioned that, but you're telling everybody to go take classes and see if this is something that works for them. And I feel like your upbringing, being in, having music around, performing arts, and your sister who led the way for you kind of prepared that. Do you think, you mentioned that before too, but being your first audition, how was that? Was it nerve-wracking for you? And how did you prepare for that? Being
Well, I
that you
think,
didn't have the necessities, as everybody else at first.
yeah, I think as an unfair advantage, I mean, I was very much so accustomed to presenting in public in front of audiences and having
Hmm.
interchanges and conversations. I'm comfortable with being on stage.
Yeah,
I've done it. I've done it many times in my professional life. So I guess in that part, I had a bit of a head start than maybe
yeah,
just somebody that maybe in another non-people facing profession when maybe wouldn't have. But as far as the actual practice, I just went back and forth and did lines and practice lines with my wife. And so tried
mm,
it in different ways and try to do it in a way that kind of made sense with what I knew about the character and tried to be authentic as I could with it, and really tried to understand the depth of how complicated relationships can be between fathers and sons. And also, I kind of had a bit of a head start because I have a son who was
Mm.
already an adult at the time. And
Yeah.
so, knowing all the challenges and the conversations that I've had with my son over the years, to be able to kind of like lean on that experience and integrate that into my performance, I think that maybe got me a little bit of a advantage over somebody who's never done anything like that before
Mm.
or used any of those skill sets. So as I got better and better, um, I went into the audition confident as I guess I could be. And so when I went to it, I did it, and I did it in the way I thought made sense. The
Yeah.
casting director was like, "That was good. Try it a different way." And so I
Mm.
was like, "Okay, all right, well, that makes sense. That could happen. That's realistic for that character." And so I went
Right.
over and I changed it up. I did it a second way. And she said, "That was good again. Could you try it now a different way?" And so it's kind of a little bit more subtle. And I was like, okay. Well, then after the third time I did it, and I just had fun with it and just let it rip and performed. And she said, "Eric, that was a really good audition." I was like, "All right, if you say so." This is my first one. So
Mm.
this is my first one for network TV. So if you say
Wow.
so, but all right, bye. It was fun.
Mm.
Talk to
You
you
know,
later.
it sounds very
Thanks for everything.
similar to like your experience playing at Duke, and just wanted to
Mm.
make that comparison, like with the what they're telling you on screen versus what your coach is telling, and then you playing in front of that in that stadium with thousands of people. You have to show up and perform, right? So just trying to
Right.
make that analogy. Do you find similarities between those?
Mm.
In a way, I guess if you're watching the game from the sideline, you can't tell, especially if you're a
Mm.
lineman like I was. You just it gets muddled and you can get lost. A lot of mistakes can be obscured from the view. But when
Mm,
you're watching film, what's the old adage? The coach said, "The eye in the sky don't lie." Right?
mm,
I remember that from multiple film studies, and just hearing that, it's like, okay, yeah. And then you're the focus, and you can see everything that you're doing wrong. Same thing.
Mm.
When you're on camera and the camera's like this close, it's catching everything. And so it's best to just prepare, prepare, prepare. I don't know if there's such a thing as over preparing.
Mm.
Um, and just when you have it, when you really worked it out in all the different angles and tried it all the different ways to have it be as successful a performance as possible, then you just let it rip and just do it as best as you can on the day of and just go with it and adjust, like just like in a game, just adjust as necessary. If the
Mm.
director is saying, that was great, I love that interpretation, but let's try it a different way this time, be
mm.
prepared to pivot, just like you do in a game.
Yeah.
What's
you know
a typical set like? Like just the number of people on a normal set, like all these eyes on you.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, just God, between the camera and the lights and electrical and sound and all the people working back around the PAs, it's a lot. I mean, there's several hundred people. I mean, feature films are every couple hundred people on, and they're running that operation. And even bigger TV, you'll have about a crew of God, I don't know the total number. It seems like it was maybe 60, 70 people all
Mm,
told. So everybody's running everywhere. It was really cool on 5.0. I had the great experience of it being a really well-oiled machine. Everybody worked together so often they kind of knew what to do, and
Mm.
everybody was on the same page. And so it's it's interesting. Again, one of the things that you kind of perceive just as a civilian who's never been in the industry before and is just a casual fan and loves to watch TV, loves to watch movies. When you're watching it on screen, you're like, I could do that. I can do that. But what you don't know is that, oh, that actor did that scene probably five,
Many
six, seven
times.
times from one angle, 5, 6, 7 times from another angle,
mm,
5, 6, 7 times from a wide angle. And so being able to go back and do it again and again and again and again is very repetitious. And if you're not ready to do that and bring it every single time, that's something that I think surprises people who are like trying and working and training, and then they actually get on set and they're like, oh, I didn't know I had to do it that many times.
yeah.
So there's a certain amount of
Mm.
stamina you have to kind of bring. Um, and then being able to deliver something, an emotional performance when there are people just kind of huddled in and watching and waiting, and it may be hot and it may be a long day, and people may be tired, and you delivering and your line and your scene may be the only thing keeping them from lunch.
Yeah.
They're all like, she's like, come on, nail it so we can go to lunch. So it's an interesting thing. It's a weird thing, but you train yourself to kind of be proficient in those environments, and it's still, I guess, similar to sports. You kind of block it out and focus on what you have to
Yeah.
do, and as you're able to deliver and focus on your keys and focus on what you're being taught to execute, in that way, it is somewhat similar to sports
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
that respect.
Thanks for sharing that. I just wanted to broaden the perspective for those who are looking in that thinks, can just walk in like, oh no, there's more to do it, on site. Not just like one on one with the camera and another guy. That
Yeah,
there's so many people involved in this.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, but really enjoyable when it goes well and when everybody's working well and rowing in the same direction. It's pretty awesome.
I like to shift gears and go back to Duke University. You mentioned
Sure.
before we started, you you started a program to tailor towards the Pacifica kids. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so as a student at Duke University, I mean back in 94, 98, that's when I was there as an undergrad student. There were no Pacific Islander kids on campus. I was the one. And I used to wear my EA around campus, and people were like, so it was kind of it was a
What is
learning experience
that?
in a lot of ways back in the early 90s, and so it was cool to be able to spread that knowledge and share that. But I was the only one. And so as I graduated, I'd get mailers for, hey, support this drive for alumni support, and as most people do after they graduate, um, I would get those mailers, and as I got older, it was, jeez, I always wondered. I was like, where are all the Pacific Islanders? I was like, was I the only one? I think I was the only one. And a few years after I graduated, maybe about 6 or 7, there was a young man actually from Houston, and his name was Mike To'iliili, and he went to Duke. He was an All American there, and then played there and played in the NFL for a bit, and now he's off in the tech sector and doing extremely well. So I knew about Mike, and but beyond myself and Mike, there weren't any others that I knew about until maybe about 3, 4 years ago. So maybe it's 2022, 2023,
Wow.
when Mike actually called me. He said, "Oh, there's a young lady here from American Samoa." And she heard about me just from something she was Googling, and she saw an article, and then she reached out to him. And so he reached out to her. He gave me her contact number. I reached out to her. And she also is, man, there's a lot of Leone going on in this show, Arlington. We didn't plan it this way, but yeah, she's originally from Leone. She's from the Ngaliali family. So
Mm.
Oh,
she's
wow.
actually there. Yeah, I got this in the mail. I luckily had this ready and prepped for it. But here's a picture we took back in 2023, and there's myself, and there's a young lady from Leone. This other young lady is from New Zealand, and this young man here, he's from Utah, and of Tongan descent. So we have Tongans, we have Samoans, we have Samoan Maoris, and then we have me. So with that group there available, I thought it was important to be able to allow for other Pacific Islanders to reach out and connect with us,
Yeah.
because if they were there at any time, either prior to my time at Duke before, from 94 to 98, or after, whether they're in the undergraduate school or in any of the graduate schools, um, I wanted to create something to allow them to latch onto, just to
Mm.
know that they're getting out there. So I founded the
Yeah.
Pacific Islander alumni group over at Duke University
Nice.
back in 2023.
I like that. That's amazing because that's something that needs to be to be, presented out there for even not just Pacifica, but for those who are not of Pacifica to understand our culture and what's
Oh
out
yeah,
there.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure. So it was important, and so for the young man, this Jonathan, who's out from, I think he's originally from Hawaii. He went to Laie Um, he grew up in Laie and went to Kahuku High School. He's a Red Raider, and so to be able to bring in all the different folks who are of Pacific Islander heritage and to educate, the community around us, to let them know who we are and where we're from and why that's important. I thought that was very important. So we're in the very early stages of organization, and so we're just trying to get the word out together now. We're all spread out all across the country. We're in DC. We're in Durham, North Carolina. Jonathan's in Utah. I'm in California. But
Mm,
in time, hopefully, we attract more folks and just know where they are and know that, hey, there are other people who have a similar background to you that have been through the Duke experience.
Yeah. So
Now,
for all of those who are listening, hey, there you go. This is it.
right.
yeah, if you have any nieces, nephews who are graduate students or are thinking about going to Duke, I've actually made a contact with a few more. So there's a handful that are there or have just recently graduated. So pretty proud to see the group growing. Always proud to see our people doing well, and no
Yeah,
matter
Yeah, I
what.
it's
agree.
good to see someone step up and
Yeah.
do that because
Yeah.
I was thinking my daughter wanted to start a similar program. She goes to the University of Oklahoma,
Oh, there
and
you go.
Hmm.
I said, "Well, who are you going to have? Because right now it's just you, Tenari, and then a handful of girls, that play softball." And but
Yeah.
she had that vision of creating, it regardless of how small, of a group there is. I was kind of like, just asking her, do you know what you're getting into? I mean, it's much more challenging as a smaller group, but then just listening to what you said, maybe I should have just kept my mouth shut and let her run with it. But her and her cousin Tanari go to University of Oklahoma, so
Oh, nice.
they're just going to continue and push on with their organizational plan. So you know, you know, you saying that makes me want to support them more than just being in their way. Yeah, great thing you've
Which
done.
it all it takes is for one person to start it,
Hmm.
Yeah.
and then not even knowing how much of a far-reaching effect that will have 5 years down the road. Because I know for me, if somebody started 5 years, in the mid late '80s, that was there at Duke and just thought to themselves, "Oh, I'm the only one here, so no use," right?
Yeah.
If they would have started it, I certainly would have reached out to them, and certainly I would have done more during my time there. When I was
Right.
there, I was like, no, 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 I'm just talking to myself. There's no benefit in me looking at the mirror and talking to myself and have a meeting of one. But yeah, certainly if there's one, it's a great place to start. Because one is better than none. And
Yeah.
in fact, some of the schools, it's really difficult. They don't even have the capacity, depending on where they are geographically in the United States, to be able to even have the demographic identification available as Pacific Islander. I mean,
Hmm.
certainly you see that's more prevalent along the West Coast and in certain parts of the Southwest, but not necessarily as you get to the middle of the country and or the South or the North or the Northeast. They're not necessarily jumping through hoops to, oh yeah, let's add that as a category. It's
Right.
not an automatic thing, right? In more recent years, it's become easier, but back when I was going to school, it was. I think what they did is they had Asian, and then they
Mhm.
had other. And so it
Right.
was a manual form. So I checked Asian because mom's Filipino. And
Yeah.
then in other, I checked that and wrote Samoan. But did anybody bother necessarily to enter that in? They probably just entered it in as other and then just like filed it away and
Yeah.
submitted it in that way. So even I didn't pop up in my own records as Pacific Islander.
Yeah, I think when I was at OU when I first got there, it was Asian slash Pacific Islander, and since my last name is Tasi, it's very similar to the other one, TSAI. So I always get the Asian American
Oh,
students,
yeah.
email,
Mhm.
change. Hey, come on, let's do all these events, and I'm like, okay, I'm the only
Right.
Samoan, and another Samoan kid. There's only two of us. For the longest, it was just the two of us. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be it's a blessing for Duke to be able to have that program and for everybody to connect because it also helps those who are coming from the islands in whatever Pacific islands they're coming from. And I mentioned this before because it's a culture shock when they come to America or any other places that they're not familiar with. So being
Yep.
able to have being able to have a connection that will allow them to say, hey, We know the feeling. We're here. So if there's anything you need, we understand and we can help you. And
Yeah.
so, with that said, I wanted to ask you, what has the journey taught you about yourself?
Um, I think the entire journey has taught me to not underestimate myself. Has taught me to just like, yeah, you think you got it nailed down, and you think you've already got what you want to do in life done, and opportunities come about, and it's like, well, that's kind of cool. It's like, should I try it? It's like, yeah. I think the older you get, the more you're like, nah, I'm fine, right? And you just kind of want to push back. But there are many wonderful things that have come about as a result of saying yes and exploring opportunities and just being open to those things and learning. And so for me, it's been a joy because I've learned so much over the last 10 years that, you know, I think left to my own devices, I probably would. I'm good. I'm fine. I'm good. I don't need to do that. So I'm glad I said yes. I'm glad my wife triple dog dared me, and I'm glad everything fell into place the way it did because I met a lot of wonderful people, including you guys.
Yes, exactly. And thank you so much for taking that call. Thank you, Moni, for calling him.
Yeah, yeah, I love that guy.
Um,
So
So
Eric, any,
what's next for you, Eric?
yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead. What is next for you, Eric? What's the upcoming project that we should be looking for?
Oh, so I'm working on a project, and I'm not going to say too much about it. It's a comedy,
Okay.
and it is a combination of things. I love comedies. I mean, I just was telling you in my early childhood, it's all we did was laugh and listen to music and laugh some more. So to be able to integrate comedy into like and blend our culture into it, that's a big part of it for me. It's important that people kind of know who we are, but also know in seeing how unique we are, similar, like simultaneously being able to see how similar we all are, right, to the just general American public. It's like there's so many universal things that we're doing. I mean, we talked about sports, we talked about um, being out and establishing yourself in college, we talked about excelling, right, in across industries, and that's something that just is a universal thing. Dealing with emotions, dealing with family, those are things that we all deal with across
Yeah.
cultures. And so being able to do that through a Pacific Islander lens is something that's a challenge, but it's something that's very important to me. And more importantly, like I said, it's the whole Magic Johnson thing to be able to just distribute, to dish, to pass, and make the team around me better and have other people shine. That's what I look forward to doing.
I like that what you just said, the
Mhm.
comedy part, because I think it's in all of us Pacific Islanders. We're known for being happy, right? You can hear us from miles away. It's just that uproar and laughter, and I think
Right.
I also fall in that feeling. So for me, if you look at any of my TikTok videos, people have they love the cultural part because I share a lot about the culture. But then
Hmm.
going back to the funny part, I also like to share like my funny side, right? So I try to do like sarcastic videos,
Right.
and the sarcastic videos don't even come out very well. It's just like, yeah, whatever. And then my other cousin who does a lot of the comedy and people love him, and he was looking. He said, "Hey, I was looking at some of your funny video. You know what? You have a serious face. Your face is not made for comedy. You have this natural frown on your face. It's hard to like your punchlines are hard to sell because you always have this natural frown."
But there's a place for that too in comedy. There's a place for the person to play it straight and to play off of
Mm.
that. You know what I mean? Some of the funniest characters have played it straight, and then to be able to bounce that off of them and just have the comedy occur around them, it's an essential part of it. So there's a place for all of it.
Mhm.
That would be my
Yeah,
role, the grumpy old man that still comes off. He has a funny
right,
punch, so you just have to see it through.
right.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, like Blackish.
Yeah.
The Larry,
Yeah.
Larry Fishburne character, Lawrence Fishburne, he's very much so
Right.
the straight guy. and then all of it bounces off of him and around him, and there's comedy in that too. So there's ways of using all type of utilizing all the different types of characters that we have in our Pacific Islander universe,
Yeah, yeah.
and to make them shine in all their different ways.
Well, talking about Shine, how can fans support you beyond watching your work?
Oh man, just so I'm at what I'm the worst. So my wife makes fun of me all the time. She's like, Eric, you're the worst at social media. You are the worst. I was joking about that on our little communications before we started.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about the Moses factor. Yeah, I'm at ericscanlan.com, and just kind of tune in and see what I'm doing there. And that's going to force me to update that website and just reach out. But more than anything else, is just the challenge is to, I think, to look deeper in anything and anybody's doing, to look deeper, because I think there's the lesson is with our community and all communities, right, is to look beyond the surface, because we can always judge of what we see and make decisions incorrectly based on what we see on the
Yeah.
surface. But when we really take a closer look, there's so much more to appreciate, to love, and to learn from, beyond just the initial knee jerk reaction when we run into each other. Because I think we all do that. We're all guilty of it as human beings. We all judge each
Yeah.
other, and we all tend to have these preconceived notions about what it is versus what it actually is. And so
Mm-hmm.
that would be the best thing I can do, because that's
Yes.
all of my material, and all of the things I hope to produce moving forward will kind of like play in that area.
Well, looking back, what would you tell younger Eric, the kid who didn't make the Soul Train?
I don't think any amount of advice would help old Eric to help young Eric to get onto Soul Train. I think maybe find a different dream. Just keep dancing at home and just have that be enough. And maybe not as a dancer, but as the uh, scramble word uncoder. If you guys remember that part of Soul
Yes,
Train.
yes.
So, so they would have like the simplest puzzles up, and it would be on a magnetic board, and the letters would be jumbled up, but it wouldn't be that hard. It'd be like, oh, what's a popular food that's eaten at a baseball field? And it'd be like hot dog, but the H and the T in the backwards and the G and the D are backwards. And the people that jump up and solve it would just go like this. And they're like, yay. Maybe that should have been my that would be my advice to young Eric. Try to get in as a Soul Train letter unscrambler. That would be the height of the dream. Not a dancer. Not a dancer.
Mm. Well, Eric, we are at the final end of our podcast. Arlington, is there anything you want to say?
No, just wanted to ask if social media existed during our younger years, how would you have handled that?
Well, not
Would
like
it
how
been
you're handling it now, but
yeah, would that have been a good thing to you?
Oh, probably not. Probably not. Probably not a good thing. It's probably a good thing it doesn't exist, or it didn't exist back then. Um, like I said, just I think a lot of learning, a lot of changing, a lot of growth happened between my younger years and where I am now. I mean, it wasn't crazy, but probably, yeah. There's just too much. There's just too much going
Yeah.
on social media and so many things. I mean, um, it probably would have been more football stuff. You probably see a whole bunch of like just videos and reels of me just walking to practice and complaining about my neck hurts and my back hurts. You probably see a bunch of those. That's what you would see. I got a headache still from yesterday's practice. I forgot my mouthpiece again. A lot of that kind of stuff.
oh yeah.
My
Put
knees
some
still
R&B
swollen.
music on it.
Right. My knees been swollen since last year. That's what I do. Be doing a bunch of reels like that. Yeah.
Your knees are hurting and you put Keith Sweat's music on at the same time with the words.
Right, right, right. I'd probably be walking around with my disc man, you know what I mean? Like I was cool, like I was doing something with the, do you remember that? The Sony disc man?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you
I
had to
was
The
walk around
heavy
with
thinking,
the disc man like
disking.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah, so you didn't it
yeah.
didn't skip, so you had to hold it like with two hands.
Rewind it, play.
Right, right.
I was thinking, coming from a family, a large family like yours, similar to mine, is being the youngest. I could see my sisters and brothers probably filming every time my dad whooped me, for doing
Oh
something stupid.
yeah.
That would probably be something that would be exposed on social media. Oh, there he goes again. He's getting whooped by dad.
Oh my God, yeah, yeah. It would be that, but it'd also be us trying not to laugh when that happened. That
Right.
would always happen. And then we'd get in trouble
Mhm.
afterwards and be sitting all around the table, like trying to just do work and be quiet. And somebody after, especially after somebody got lickings or somebody got in trouble, um, us starting to like laugh about it and trying like hard to hold it in. And the harder, the quieter it is, and the the more
I hear
tense
you.
the environment, the more you want to laugh. So yeah, it'd be a whole bunch of laughing and getting lickings. That's what our and it would probably our social media would be full of.
No, that's all I had. Appreciate that, Eric. Go ahead, Lasso.
Eric, I know you mentioned this before about the community. I'm going to ask again since it's towards the end. What is your final message to your community tuning in tonight?
Oh man, just keep going. Be resilient. Don't let things stop you. Just continue to grind. Continue to find out what it is. If you haven't already, find out what you're passionate about. And once you find that, just go for it, and just keep going. And um, that's probably what I would communicate to my community, because I think there's so many people that get discouraged and stop, and then just lose hope and lose faith. So I would say keep the faith, keep moving, keep your faith strong, and keep going and stay resilient. And usually good things happen as a result of that consistency.
Thank you, Eric. And one thing I wanted to say too is the beauty about what you're doing is that even though you're busy with family and work, you also have time to do your part with our community. And so that's a blessing for us to have is for you to also think about us out there that's trying to understand, especially where everybody thinks Polynesian is only sports. You could do more than
Right.
just sports. And also keeping in communication with those who are in the university and also those who are trying to get into the acting that never thought that it was possible. So we really appreciate that and really appreciate you being on the podcast and taking the opportunity to allow us to have you on our platform to share your experience and your journey. And thank you to your wife as well, who is a blessing that is able to allow us to have you on and helping you to get to your where your journey is as well and your kids. So we
Well, thank
appreciate
you
you,
guys
your
so much.
family. Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you guys so
And
much. You guys are
yeah,
wonderful, and I wish you guys all the best.
thank you. And to everyone else out there, you guys have a safe night, good night, and to God be all the glory. Again, Eric, thank you. And send
Right.
our love to your wife and your family. Have a good
Thank you,
We'll
night.
brother
do.
Eric.
You guys take care.
Thank you, you too.
It's a
Bye.
pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.